When it comes to viewing anime and media in general, people tend to stick to genres they know they'll enjoy. And while my favorites tend more toward the adventurous or character-focused stories, the range of shows that we as consumers might actually like run the gamut. For example, there are a few anime I've seen that fall outside what I would consider my strike zone, yet retain my interest and entertain me despite their setting. Yuri on Ice is one of those anime, and the one I'm here to talk about today. Entertaining you even when you normally wouldn't consider watching it is, to me, the mark of a good anime, and why giving certain shows a watch is important to expand your palate and experience some truly fun stories. Good work transcends genre, typing, and all the other qualifiers you'd identify in a piece of media, so I encourage you to always try something new every season. Now, right out of the gate, I do want to mention that this anime is extremely gay, and I mean that in all the positive senses of the word. Yuri on Ice is refreshingly open with its view on sexuality and relationships, even down to the in-world canon as we see later in the series. The sense of acceptance and general positivity is one of the reasons I believe this anime works so well, and confirmed my thought that couples are cute regardless of their gender. And believe me, there will be couples in this series, though mostly focused on the more masculine side. Now, it's unavoidable to mention the gender and sex politics when talking about an anime with such a straightforward gay romance, and that's a mire I don't want to delve too deeply in so I don't offend anybody. I will say, however, that I believe love is the most important thing in the world between two consenting individuals. So it's refreshing to see an anime that seems to take the same tack regarding the relationships fostered within it. In a way, this acceptance and general positivity towards concepts that are unfortunately still taboo in our world is a microcosm of my point in this video. You can and should step outside of your comfort zone to experience and experiment with the concepts you'd otherwise never get into. The way Yuri on Ice handles its obvious shipping is an experiment for Yuri, and while it can be argued they're just friends, and I'd say the anime is probably intentionally framed to accomplish this, there's no question in my mind that these two lovebirds care for each other in more than a simple friendship way. Speaking of, even the friendships beyond Yuri and Victor are a huge sticking point for my enjoyment of the show, because nearly every character introduced is just so supportive, either through direct competition with the case of Yurio, or through the amazingly open relationships that each of the competitors have with their respective rivals. Even the people that are there just to cheer are given unique personalities, as they root for their favorites, or in the case of this one character, everyone who looks even remotely cute to her. The emotions in this series are worn on their sleeve, and aside from the titular characters, very little is held back when conversing. Pishit especially is the brightest bundle of joy I can possibly imagine. So why does this all work so well, and get you invested in the skating that's supposedly the focus of the show? Well, I'd say it's the same reason that people enjoy characters in other genres so much. If you have a compelling, complex angle of relationships and offer realistic takes on how people react, it's nothing but a joy to watch because you feel invested in these characters as relatively real people. The suspension of disbelief is easier to swallow, in other words. Even the characters with roles in the competitions Yuri skates through to qualify for the big game have their individual stories. And while this can be a detriment to some people for easily understandable reasons, as it decreases the screen time of the person we're supposedly here to see, I can't help but feel that every character deserves the chance to exist and maintain their own goals and ideas. Because that's what Yuri on Ice is about, sharing your feelings on and off the ice as people in a circle of interest find common ground, and build off of that to form the relationships we see forged and already tied together in the series. But back to the subject at hand, openness. As I mentioned earlier, this is a quality that most of the characters in the show explicitly display, except for the two most important characters, Yuri and Yurio. And that's honestly where the most compelling conflict in the series comes from. Though Yurio is much more open with the negative emotions he displays towards Yuri, the emotions and wistfulness that fills him when seeing Victor coach Yuri are still a big deal to him inside. And we see this especially later on in Russia when the Rostelecom Cup competition is occurring. This same difficulty with openness that Yuri and Yurio struggle with is reflected poetically in the way they skate throughout the series. Yuri has trouble getting across his emotions in the way he skates, while Yurio has the opposite problem of letting his emotions rage out of control. These two are very compelling mirrors to each other, and the way Victor picked their skating routines near the beginning of the series is a great way to improve their respective emotional issues, even putting aside the fact that this is a show and therefore needs conflict. Victor is shown to be empathetic enough to understand what both of the boys need to succeed, and the sense of pride he shows throughout the series as he watches them skate is honestly touching. And that brings me to how Victor's openness troubles him and those around him. He lives very much in the moment, and though he has some great foresight when dealing with the two Yuris, he can still definitely hurt the two with his blasé attitude toward life that served him well so far. The fact that he promises to coach Yurio, but then becomes inspired and enraptured by Yuri, is an issue that comes to the forefront early on in the series, but one that continues to be a problem as the series progresses. Victor isn't just an inspiration for the two, but an absolute idol, and the fact that he sometimes missteps like a normal human would can shake the confidence and make the two Yuris question their idolization, and as a result, their dreams in general. This is thankfully played out in a way that causes Yurio to grow and burst from the ties that bind him to Victor, and convinces him to try outperforming everyone to become the best there is. For Yuri, on the other hand, Victor's actions wreak havoc on the young man's fragile confidence. But because of these missteps, Yuri comes to realize that Victor is only human, and removes the pedestal-like idolization that he previously had for Victor, which in turn improves his confidence enough that he feels he can skate next to Victor as an equal. Another facet of openness I want to bring up is the way that the internet is tied into the show, one of which is through the posting of Yuri's Victor imitation skate routine. The fact that this is what stirs Victor to follow through on the feeling he had during that drunken night a year previous is exactly the way the internet is so important to connecting people across the world. In fact, pictures and video are an important part of the series in general, down to the ending being primarily shown through the lens of a camera, and then posted on the various social media sites by the competitors. That everyone posts their treasured moments and genuinely seem happy and enjoying themselves is a capacity of the internet I find endlessly fascinating. Though there are concerns that posting only the happy moments in their lives can affect people in a negative way, as if to say we never have sad moments, when the person viewing them does. I still think the ability to share your favorite moments with people across the world speaks to the heart in a way that brings people and emotions closer together. Now, I've spoken to the way I believe the show excels in its openness, but I do want to take the time to talk about the ways it doesn't work as well as it could have, or how it might otherwise turn off some potential viewers. A lot of the show's major plot is developed on the ice, through the monologues that the characters have when they're skating their routines. And while these scenes are filled with flashbacks and some great animations, they're also not as strong as the pathos displayed in the moments off the ice. In fact, the moment that most clearly stands out to me in the series as a huge mark in the strength column is when Yurio and Odebek share their trip through the city as the series nears its end. The fact that such strong scenes exist can make the ice skating routines much duller in comparison. However, there's not really a great fix to this, as the skating routines can't be changed in any meaningful way to increase the pathos and entertainment compared to the scenes off the ice, because the characters are more isolated from others by the very nature of the sport. In this way, I can see why some would feel the show's story is somewhat held back by its sport, which is a big problem for an anime mostly devoted to showcasing that sport. And while the monologues during the routines are still fun insights into the characters, there's also another complaint I've seen listed as a mark against the show, which is its reliance on melodrama as a central plot point. Honestly, melodrama is one of the emotional beats of the show that feels like a downer even to me, but without that feeling, the highs of the joyful moments wouldn't be nearly as effective, so I can accept it all to serve the story. Still, there are more effective ways of creating conflict than just using melodrama, like focusing more on the competition aspect like Haikyuu tends toward, or improving their routine with more and more fervor, which the show does try to do to its credit. Still, if you're turned off by melodrama in the classic anime sense, and even the way prima donna athletes act in the real world, you might not enjoy the way the show tackles the emotional downbeats, and that's certainly fine. Like I said, trying and experimenting with other genres is awesome, and good on you for doing it, but you don't have to like or even enjoy it after you try it. Some things just aren't for some people, no matter how great they are to others. In the end though, I'm not terribly offended by the finished product, but it may be a concern to you or others. Now, to bring it back to the sport for a moment, I do want to mention that this anime is definitely a sports anime, with all that implies. If you aren't interested in the sport being performed, that's going to be a big deal breaker if the monologue and character motivations can't pull you in long enough to get through them, because a lot of what you're going to see is routines. And on top of that, Yuri and Yurio's routines will be repeated multiple times throughout the series, with reused animations in quite a few spots, though there still will be minor differences as they experiment with their actions to align their emotional wavelengths more and more with the feelings their routines are meant to evoke. And lastly, of course, if you disapprove of relationships between men, you will not find this show appetizing, even if you attempt to explain it all away as just friendship. In addition, the only heterosexual-ish relationships the anime really shows, beyond the parents of Yuri, are for the antagonist of the series. The first of which is an old bully of Yuri's marrying his high school crush, the second being a man pining after a sister in a more than brotherly way, a third being Georgie skating to show up the girl who dumped him, and the last being JJ and his fiancée. While each of these heterosexual relationships end in a satisfying and honestly heartfelt way, with the bully asking Yuri to forgive him for all the bullying and clearly making Yuri's crush happy, Mickey accepting his identity without his sister, Georgie coming to terms with his ex's feelings, and JJ's fiancé offering a stirring cheer for JJ when he stumbles in his performance, they are still shown in a more negative light than the utter joy and acceptance that Yuri and Victor's relationship is treated with throughout the series. But like I said, I don't want to dig into the mire of gender and sex politics too much. It's possible that the ideas I mentioned weren't intentional, or even remotely intimated by the people who made the anime. And even if they were, I don't have a problem with them getting their message across. All opinions are equal in my eyes, and whatever you believe, that's your choice. And in an effort to remain open, as this anime so clearly wants to showcase as an attractive trait, I don't believe that heterosexual relationships are intentionally kept in the more negative scenes of the series, because they wouldn't end in positivity if that was the case. I'd like to believe the creators love all love equally like I do, but I do want to put forward the idea for discussion, because it might be something you see if you're personally against homosexual relationships, and therefore could ruin the anime for you. In any case, Yuri on Ice is an anime that I'd recommend, and while I don't believe it to be one of the greatest, it was good enough to keep me watching week to week when it's not in my wheelhouse. So whatever you believe, however open you are, or how much you want to ship things other than Yuri and Victor or Yurio and Odebek, I hope we can all come together to watch the show with the thought of openness in mind. And if you can't, like I said, that's fine. At least you tried. If you have a view you'd like to share with me, leave them down in the comments. Or even make your own video, and link me to it so I can watch you discuss what you think of Yuri on Ice. Otherwise, I'm glad you took the time to watch. And you can send your hugs, kisses, and death threats through my Twitter, Tumblr, Reddit accounts, or even right here on my YouTube page. And remember, enjoy the way you watch anime, because as long as you're having fun, that's all that really matters. Catch you on the flip side.